All right, Catcher, you should be live streaming on YouTube now. So if you just want to record the meeting when you guys are ready to begin.
Jessica, I greatly appreciate it. And could you record it? I have to ask you for permission to record it. Wonderful. Thank you. We'll start off this meeting of the Certification Advisory Committee at 9:39 a.m. and we'll start it by giving Jessica Mueller on State Board of Education staff a 10 out of 10 rating for helping me get this meeting. We will start off with the taking the attendance, and as we usually do here, as Chair Peasley allows me to facilitate these meetings, which I appreciate, just in this setting, make it a little bit easier. I just kind of run through and note who's here. So we have member Janesh Pinnell, member Tabo, member Farah, member Lighting, member Weber, member Corporate, member Watson, Vice Chair Dumler, and Chair Peasley. And that does give us a quorum. And we can get moving here. And Jessica, I don't know if you can allow me to share my screen. Sorry, I messed it all up by not being able to live stream us here. So there we go. Thank you. So members, we will get moving right away. We do have just the one agenda item today, and that is an agenda item to make conforming changes to Senate Bill 1159, which was passed earlier this year. I should note we don't have any, I don't have anything to report for the Deputy Director's report, and we don't have any members who provided a call to the public, a request to speak, which they were able to do through our inbox. So our one agenda item today, you see these rule changes here, the 5 rule changes to various certification rules. And as I'd mentioned before, this is conforming to Senate Bill 1159. For the most part, there are some changes. As you've probably noticed, every time we open up certification rules, oftentimes there's some other tweaks or cleanup. Sometimes there's antiquated rules that need to be updated. And that's the case here with some of these. Or ways that we find that are a little bit better to do things. And that's what you'll find here. But largely, the bulk of this is conforming to Senate Bill 1159. And I think, to be honest, there's not a whole lot of policy choices, I think, that were made here. I think a lot of it's conforming, but there were a few. So what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to run through the summary, which is on Simbly, which you can, I gave you the link to. This is publicly available, all of it's public. I'm just going to run through the summary of it real quick, and then I'll pause for questions, and then we can open up and look at the rules itself, which of course you do have drafts of the rule. If you find them there, they're all attached at the bottom of that item. I think you all remember Senate Bill 1159. We went over it at the last meeting. I'm not going to go over it again, but if you have questions on it, just let me know and we can talk about it some more. So the first rule here, and it's just in chronological order. There's nothing special about the order of why this is there other than it's chronological, or not chronological, I'm sorry, just numerical order. The first is to 604, and it says et al, and that's because there's a few 604, 01, and so on and so forth. And those are largely the EPP, stands for Educator Preparation Program. Those are the Educator Preparation Program rules and approval processes for those EPPs. And you can see the first bullet point here is adding the locally based leadership preparation programs. Don't forget, in Senate Bill 1159, it added the ability for schools to establish these locally based leadership prep programs that are largely similar to how the classroom-based teacher preparation programs are set up. It's just that these are focused on site-based leaders which you might usually think of as principals. So that just adds that stuff. And again, when I'm talking about conforming changes, similar to the classroom-based, where the board has limited flexibility on additional requirements, the statute goes out of its way to say that the board can't really add anything that's beyond what's in the statute. The same goes for these locally based prep programs. So a lot of that's just kind of pulled and dropped into, pulled from the statute, dropped into the rule. Second bullet point, this is something that is a little more of a policy choice. This is to require all preparation programs, not just the new leadership-based or classroom-based, but traditional, all the classroom-based, the locally based, to include in their initial application a plan for how they're going to notify and assist participants in the program if that program ends up closing. We've had a couple scares and other things down the road that might indicate this might be an issue. And this isn't requiring them to do any specific action other than telling us how they're going to notify and assist their participants. It's not requiring them to do anything necessarily. It's just we want to make sure that they're thinking about those things and that they continue to think about those, and perhaps even in their biennial reports moving forward. Again, not a huge policy item, but something that we felt was necessary and is not just something geared towards the new alternative programs, but even some of our traditionals. And I'll pause at the end of each of these big chunks of rules if there's any questions. The third one is conforming changes for the classroom-based prep program applications. They added a few things. Some of those were things that were already in rules, some not, so we're just adding those in when we have to. And then the last is moving the review process for classroom-based prep into this one of these rules. You probably noticed that it looks like there's a whole big chunk of things going on there. And it's not to worry, a lot of that's just pulling it over. And originally it's because in the classroom-based stuff, we just cited the alt prep program approval process. But ADE pointed out, and I think rightly so, that there's some things in that alt prep program approval process that are not consistent with what the statute asks. So rather than, and the board got in trouble for doing something like that to a much higher degree, but it's still in the same vein a few years ago. And so rather than run into those issues again, we're just going to cite, or we're going to redo the what the statute asks for how to review those classroom-based prep programs. So now a lot of this, I understand, is educator prep program approval process that is not always necessarily within CAC's wheelhouse because you all are more focused on the requirements of the certificates. However, and some of this is frankly just more operational for how the board does things and how they interact with ADE. But it is part of this whole package, so we thought it made sense to provide it to you all. So I will pause there and see if there are any questions from members on at least just this section of the Ed Prep process approval.
I would like to thank Bruce and Maura and Michelle and their team for doing such a great job in bringing sense and order to the rule recommendations based on the work of the state legislature. This was a heck of a task to bring all of this together, and you've done a really great job, and we're so appreciative of the work that the department does all the time. So thank you. And I did not have any questions on R72604. That looked fine to me. The rest of the group?
I see Member Farah has her hand up.
Yeah, I had just a clarifying question on the policy, like when you mentioned the notify and assist program participants. Can you just clarify kind of what that would entail? Is that, because when I look at the assist program participants, and hopefully none of them close, but if they close, are they having some sort of a requirement that they're going to have to move those program participants to another program? Is that kind of the idea behind it, rather than leaving the participants to figure it out on their own, or kind of what's that? If you could clarify what you're looking for in that statement, it's just a little unclear to me.
Yeah, Member Farah, and Bruce can jump in on this as well if you would like. He doesn't have to. But the qualification, what we're looking for, actually, we're not necessarily looking for anything specific. It's just, do they have a plan? Have they thought about what they're going to do if they close? What will they do to assist? First, to notify the folks in the program and also their partner schools, and then how they're going to help them in the and so that might include what you had mentioned, helping them find another program to help finish. It might just include talking to ADE and saying, look, we're about to close. You're going to have to figure out, how are you going to help these guys out? I guess we don't necessarily have a prescribed answer for what we're looking for. We just want to know that they're thinking about it and that they have some plan in place, and that ADE specifically, but also the board can look back to if that does occur and say, okay, we don't have to recreate, we don't have to reinvent the wheel on what we're doing. We already have something that both have looked at that we can refer to as a way to go and a path forward. But there's not necessarily a prescribed answer that we're looking for. I mean, I think we would hope that they had a pretty thorough answer to that, but it's just to get them thinking about it and to have something to refer back to.
So as long as there's a plan of some sort in place, it's just a yes or no kind of a thing for the application process?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think, I think down the road, depending on those answers, or depending on if this becomes a common theme, then I think, we might recommend to the board maybe some more specific things that we're looking for. But for right now, it's just a plan.
Having served on the alternative educator preparation committee, application review committee, there is a very extensive rubric for each item that the applicants prepare a response for. And I'm sure this is my assumption was that this particular item was going to be rubric based, and that it would require more than a yes or no. It would be like the other questions. I don't think there were any yes or no questions on those applications that we used to review. Is that correct?
Chair Peasley, I don't recall, but I do, similar to the classroom-based, well, we saw some classroom-based when that alt ed prep program committee was established and worked under the board. There were some that were yes or no, like, did they have an organizational chart? And did they provide that? So I do recall there being some binary answers, and the board just in the committee was, in that case, restricted in looking at too many things outside of just the efficacy of the program in terms of their ability to produce quality educators. But that's just what I can remember off the top of my head. I see Bruce unmuted, so I don't know if he was going to jump in.
Sure. I just, just a reminder that we have all the way from traditional institute higher ed based programs, we have alternate higher ed based programs, we have alternate organization based, national organization based, and now we have LEA based with the classroom based ed prep programs. And so there's a wide range of organizations and institutions that are involved with this. And so it really is that, like Ketra alluded to, them thinking about the plan and what makes sense for them. And that probably will even vary throughout. It may see biannuals when, for instance, some of the traditional shut down a program and they retool it. And so what's the plan? Are they going to teach out and then and re-enroll, or some of the organizational based alt preps when they're getting ready to shut down, or it's not profitable, so they don't want to play, they don't want to play in that arena anymore. What's their plan? And it could be a communication plan, down to, I think what, we'd like to have the conversation with them as well about, if this is coming, don't accept new enrollees, because the pipeline, you shut down and they're halfway through their program. And then if it's alternative based, they may not have any other options. It's not like they have a transcript with credits to go somewhere. They basically have to start over. So it could be a yes or no. I don't know that, if we have a rubric, we're looking for something specific, but I think it's so situationally based. But them stepping forward and articulating what they're thinking, and at least maybe out the door, because they're just starting up a program. It's just about communication. And then as we go, that's kind of in their mind. That's kind of what I think we were thinking.
Thank you so much for the explanation.
All right, moving on, we have 607, which is our general provisions rule for certification. And you can see the first change there is a little bit of a tweak. It's changing. This is when we're talking about being able to qualify for the proficiency examination waiver. There's some language in there that's specific to educated to teachers, and then there's language specific to administrators, and we're just swapping out rather than saying administrator to leadership position, which is a little more all-encompassing, but also it will help align us to the new language in 1159 that is looking for a leadership-based prep program and trying to be consistent there. The second bullet point there is just a conforming change from the legislation that previously statute had required if someone wanted to qualify for the proficiency exam and they had passed it in another state, that other state's exam had to be, quote, substantially similar to our examination. The legislation removed substantially, so we're just making that conforming change. And then I might as well just lump in the subject matter expert rule, and then I'll pause to see if there's any questions, because the admin stuff is a little meatier. But that one is, there's a typo, and then there's also some conforming changes for those subject matter experts to receive training in ethics and professionalism within the first 3 years of receiving their certificate. And the board is required to offer some of that training for free to those educators, and that's something that we're working on. So that's just conforming from the bill and pulling it in here, which is largely what you see in 607 as well. So are there any questions or comments or concerns? We can help out on 607 or the subject matter expert. I see member Farah has her hand up.
I've got some questions today. So on the completion of the ethics training within 2 years, couple questions. Is the training already is it already in place by the board? Is it still coming? And then we do ethics training as part of our just annual policy review, and we've got some online training tools that we used for that. Is that dependent on the LEA to require that? And is there additional work that we're going to have to do to show that our ethics training complies with this? Or is it something that they have to go through the board for?
Great questions, Member Fair. TBD, the rule doesn't specify. The board certainly is going to have its own training that's free. I do know that we've had some conversations internally, and when we had talked about this and going back to a couple of years, to approving LEA's trainings if we felt that if the board felt that they were high quality and so on. So I do think there is an option that is probably, I know sometimes in these rules we have board approved trainings for certain aspects of certification that can get kind of tricky, because that could be a lot of potential trainings, and of course the board only meets so often, we have to come up with a whole process to review those. But I do think the board, because this touches on educator discipline, and the board has certainly prioritized that aspect of its duties and responsibilities over the last several years. And so I think the board will want to have its say on the trainings that we are going to offer, but also to approve, have LEAs potentially apply and approve LEA trainings for ethics and professionalism. And the reason being that, as I mentioned, the board has a high priority on educator discipline, but there's also certain things that we've seen on a statewide level for subject matter experts that are a little bit unique compared to their peers. Now, with the caveat that the sample size is smaller because, you know, there's significantly fewer subject matter experts compared to elementary educators, right? You know, it's exponentially smaller. However, those educators in the data we saw are getting disciplined for the more severe actions more often than those other peers. So again, small sample size, caveats that could be noise, but it was enough for the board to ask for this language in the bill. And so there might be, all that's to say is there might be some professional ethics training that works for everybody statewide, but there might also be some specific for subject matter expert educators on this training specifically that the board may want to hit on. So to circle back, I guess the short answer is TBD. However, I do expect the board to take a route where they would approve LEA trainings to qualify, and probably want to vet those trainings themselves. The board would want to vet those trainings.
So because it's part of the legislature, we would take action on that. Is that correct, Chairman Peasley? Or would we wait till the board determines all of that?
We typically have put into rule as soon as possible the legislative changes. So, and I think we have precedents on in other years put preparatory language in rule while there was still some program development going on. Bruce, did that happen under your Carolyn? And you're nodding your head too. You recall that as well?
Yeah, you know, this legislation goes into effect end of September, and so this verbiage is in statute as is. It's a copy and paste to rules. So from a certification perspective, we're bound to do the deficiency and enforce this anyway.
Are there any other questions?
And just a heads up for everyone, I am only looking on the participants page on the Zoom, so I can only see if you're raising your virtual hand when you can click that button to raise your hand. And so I'm not if you're waving at the camera, hopefully Chair Peasley or someone else can help me out, because I only have so much room on my screen. But I don't see any virtual hands, so I'll move on to 616, which deals with the administrator certificates. And if you took a look at the rule, you can see there's quite a few changes in there. And part of that is because we haven't touched them in a while. So there's some things in there that need to be updated. The first bullet point there is just a clarification. The language is there in the rule, but it's I think Mara pointed out, it's not as clear as it should be, which is just that superintendents by statute are not required to have a certificate. There's some other, for those who do want to have that certificate, or districts that want to hire somebody who does have that certificate, there's a prerequisite certificate in order to get the superintendent certificate that are listed in the rule. We haven't updated those, and so there's some that are missing that should be in there, so we added those. The third bullet point is changing credit to semester. That's not a policy change, that's just because it can be confusing, because a credit could mean a quarter, it could mean a semester, so just making sure we're clear on what we're talking about. Eliminating the SCI requirement, that was actually several years ago that was removed as a requirement. And then moving the interim certs into a new section, and that's where a lot of you see a lot of changes. It looks like we're creating a whole new cert, a bunch of certs, and taking out a whole bunch of other certs. And that's not the case. Just moving them out to a new section because it's just a little bit cleaner to have those interim certs in a different section than the full certificates. And then the last bullet point there is for the admin certificate anyways, is establishing these, what the certificates are that these individuals will receive when they graduate from the new locally based leadership preparation programs. And AE suggested, and we're recommending here, calling them site-based supervisor and principal certificates. Because the statute does specify that they are for the site, that they're not necessarily district certificates or those types of things. So are there any questions on the administrator certificate section and rule changes?
Yes, I did have some questions about that, and I think you might have answered answered it. Because a site-based supervisor, that would prevent someone with that. So is this a brand new certificate? The site-based supervisor?
Chair Peasley, yes, and that's because the locally based leadership program is also new. So yes, it would be a new certificate.
So then should we have a new rule that just talks about that, or is it, that's covered in here? That's where that's covered, principal and supervisor and all of that. It's all covered here.
Yeah, that new section of rule is on the draft. It's pages 5 and 6, so I didn't put page numbers on some of these. But it's a new proposed rule 616.01. And then it would be subsections B and C for the site-based supervisor cert and the site-based principal cert.
Okay, I'm just thinking that there's going to need to be some strong clarification on that site-based supervisor, because the site-based supervisor specializes school, only appropriate for a school-based leadership position. Yet the current regular supervisor certificate allows holders to supervise and hold positions at the district level. And currently, a lot of special education directors, curriculum directors hold a supervisor certificate. So I'm just wondering what, or if there's going to be some clarification that's going to, and understanding that's going to be coming out from the department, from certification, with that carries a warning, so to speak, that this is not, unlike the site-based superintendent, unlike the site-based principal, this is not going to let people work at the district level.
And Chair Peasley, I'll defer to Bruce on a lot of that in terms of the communication. Certainly, I think the cause or the potential for confusion is why we tried to clarify that these are site-based, and then those other certificates have that similar qualification at the beginning. So I think we empathize, and I also it would be a school-based or site-based. It's not like they are restricted to the school that they we're working with as part of the program, but it is only at a school level that cert would be valid. Yeah, Bruce, if I don't know if you had any other clarifications you wanted to add there, and then I see Member Farah has her hand up too after that.
Yeah, just real quick. It is Maura did a great job. She helped draft these along with Catcher, but it is delineated under the outline under B and then under C as well. It really articulates what they can. It says, perform similar administrative duties at the school level. When we make our requirement documents, we'll put that a little bit more, not so rule-esque, but more a little bit in English. And then, of course, once these are adopted or accepted in whatever format they're accepted in, then it's, we will communicate via email as well as ASPA Fall Conference and the various stakeholder groups to get them up to speed. We'll see how the appropriately certified system works. That really is focused on teachers and letting the LEAs know about appropriate certification for teachers. But I don't know if we haven't had to do that for administrators prior. So, and I don't know that they delineate district staff that way, but so it'll be a communication front from our standpoint.
Go ahead, Member Craig.
Okay, so yeah, and Chairman Peasley, just to kind of, your comments brought up a question for me, and that is smaller schools or even smaller districts where your site-based administrator is also the district administrator because everybody wears the same hat, right? So I think of at my school too, like our special ed director is at our school. But technically could also be viewed as at the charter school district level. So yeah, there's a little bit of confusion there now that I have as well on that.
If I could weigh in and respond to that, members and chair. So yeah, these are new certificates. And so I think there's still, a little bit of a hierarchy, right? So if you still qualify for the standard professional supervisor, standard professional principal, you don't have that restriction. This is creating a certificate for those folks that complete the site-based leadership program, and by statute are limited to practicing now at a site, not at the district level. And so, yeah, communication will be key, but that's kind of the difference. They can still go, if they still qualify for supervisor or principal, they can still receive that certificate, and then they're not bound by that. They can be at a site or they can be at district level.
If there's one thing I've noticed when we went through the classroom-based that this was essentially modeled after, there might be additional legislative changes that come to this that does seem to happen, and it also it might take a few years before we see, and then once we see them, we might see a significant number. But classroom-based, for the first few years, we just, we had, one district or two, and then after this, I think this past year and a little bit the year before that, but started getting a whole bunch. So that communication, we will probably have some time to get schools and LEAs up to speed, and then there might even need to be some pivots if there's some legislative changes. Okay, and then last up, again, just putting them in numerical order, no special order here, is 619.
Excuse me.
Oh,
Hold
yep.
on. No, I'm not finished.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. No, if we go back to the first page of our 72616, letter B, 2A, we struck other professional certificate. It has not been replaced in the new language. So then under a standard supervisor certificate, again, we're now eliminating school psychologists and speech therapists because those are the other professional certificates, same as a counselor. Was that an intent? There'd been a lot of work in years past, or is that, can we add that back in?
Yeah, I see Mara raised her hand.
Okay, Laura said, good catch. We should
Yeah.
have-
Yeah, that was a good catch. We missed that. We definitely want to keep those in there.
Okay,
Okay, I will, and everyone can see, I've got the rule pulled up. Can everyone see it?
yes,
Okay, I will make a change right now. And what we're talking about is reinserting other professional certificate, but the intent is to capture, what were the other certificates you had mentioned, Chair Peasley?
school psychologist, speech therapist, counselor.
Do we want to put non-teaching professional? Because that's what they're categorized under in rule.
That would make sense.
All right, what was that, Bruce? I'm sorry.
The non-teaching professional, that's all those certificates are under that header and rule.
Okay. With the caveat here, so I've added in non-teaching professional certificates at the end here with the caveat that maybe the verbiage after Mara and Bruce and I look at it, maybe the verbiage needs to be tweaked or something like that. But with the understanding that the intent is clear to capture those other certificates that would be captured under or were captured under this language, that's what we'll add. And I'm trying to give myself and ADE some wiggle room in case this verbiage isn't right, but I think the intent is clear. So just so everyone understands, and when we go to vote on this today, we would vote on this draft with this addition,
Yes.
with the caveat that perhaps some of the verbiage might need to be different, and maybe we would spell them out all specifically, or just do what Bruce said on the fly because he knows what he's talking about. He put his hands up like he doesn't. He does. Does that sound good, Chair Peasley?
Yes, that does. Thank you very much.
All
I will
right.
sleep better tonight.
Good catch. Did you have something else or anything else on?
No, that was it. That was my last comment. There you go.
Right. Okay, so now last up is the renewal rule. And there was some interest, if you've looked at our the renewal rule, there's the requirements for continuing education hours, and you'll note that there's somewhat a list of what can count for those continuing education hours. And then there's some very all-encompassing language that is very flexible. And there was some interest in adding some more things to that specific list. And specifically, I'm talking about the things that some educators are required to do by statute, like some educators anyways. The EpiPen administration, the emergency administration of EpiPens, of inhalers, seizure management training was just something that was added. Statute has added a few of these over the years. We've always felt the sort of all-encompassing language of the renewal rule captured those already. There was some interest and some, I think, confusion from probably policy people. I don't know if it was really people in the field, but policy people that it wasn't listed, so those wouldn't count. That wasn't our position. And so we thought we could clarify those by adding them, but we felt that would be a little redundant and unnecessary and continue to clutter up that rule. So really, we just added as a happy middle ground, I'm sorry. We just added that the continuing ed hours can come from training that's required by state law. There's already some in there that touches on that, but that'll make that piece even more clear, hopefully. And then there's a conforming change to Senate Bill 1159. So are there any questions on the renewal rule? Renewal rule, which is tough to say.
I didn't have any questions. Betsy, you're our question person today. You've had great ones.
I'm okay on this one. I know. So
I saw Vice Chair Dumler had unmuted, and then I saw Bruce has his hand up. So we'll go with Member Dumler first. I assume if you unmuted, I assume you wanted to talk, but if not, I don't. I'm sorry to call you out. Oh, and muted again. Okay. Bruce, that means you're up.
I just wanted to highlight that this change is actually good. So that this is our lovingly called 10-10-2 rule, that if they expire, they're 2 years into expiration and they're within 10 years of expiration that they could renew, they had to have 10 years of teaching time on the cert they wanted to renew under the former statute and rule, and they struggled. Human resources didn't keep records back that far. People had left. They really struggled to find the verification of that 10 years of teaching as an elementary or as a social studies teacher. So this really helps that and makes it much easier for folks to bring back their certificates. And, if you let your certificate go, by and large, you're under the new rule, which if you got trained up in the 80s or 90s, you might have had different programs that don't have everything in current rule. So this really helps bring back former certificate holders, former educators back into the field. So
good addition there, Bruce. And he's talking about the second bullet point that I just sort of chalked up to a conforming change. But yeah, good information there. Definitely easier administratively. Okay, well, seeing no further questions, I would open it up to start entertaining some votes on these rules to recommend to the full board, which we would hope to get it in front of them at their September board meeting, which is September 26th. But before I do that, I guess I just want to pause one last time before we start voting on these. And I think Chair Peasley had indicated that she'd like to take each of these individually. So I'll just pause to see if there's anybody who would like to jump in before we start making some recommendations to the full board on these rules that are listed. I see Mara has her hand up. And Bruce said earlier, I just want to mention, Bruce said earlier, this rule is actually good, implying that the rest of the rule changes were maybe not, but I'm sure that was not his intent with that language. They're all good quality changes there. There we go, he's got a thumbs up. All right, I'm sorry, Mark.
Yes, no, that's okay. We like that one though. I have to tell you, in terms of paperwork, it's. I was just going to say, with the supervisor certificate, I do think I'm looking at the rules, so it would be other professional certificates. And I think it's good to keep it broad the way it is now, because one issue we've had is a new certificate or a new type of certificate gets inserted, and then other rules, it impacts other rules like endorsements. So we don't know, if the intent is that this new certificate should be able to get the endorsement. That way, anything that goes under this certificate, they'll be able to get the supervisor certificate. So I think other professional, just general, will cover us. And also, we just need to put it under the interim certificate also, because under both. So that's all. That's all.
Mara, I forgot that we had that in two sections. Okay, so we'll go for now anyways. Again, when we have some more time to look at this, when it's not on the fly, might change this again. But the intent is still clear, and we're going to capture this here, as well as Mara pointed out, because I forgot we had done this twice. It's down in the interim cert. So, and I apologize if I'm sharing the screen, so you're getting the jolt of watching me scroll here.
Well, we appreciate your showing the screen so that we see the changes, and then when we call for the vote, then we know exactly what we have, what we're voting on, what the changes are. The when I recommended approving these individually, that's because based on past experiences, when there's been a number of rules, there was a lot of discussion, and not all of it, when there was a significant amount of discussion that went on over an extended period of time, It's kind of hard to remember back. So what did we talk about with the first one? What did we talk about with the second one? But I feel pretty confident with this package that we didn't have as many questions as we've had in the past, that it was the questions we did have were clarified. The big one was on 616 and question, and that's been resolved certainly to my satisfaction and happiness. So I'd be fine with just voting on having a motion on the entire package.
Okay. Great. Before we do that, Mara, I just wanted, was it the interim supervisor? Is that what where the other change needed to be made?
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
I just wanted to make sure. Okay. And obviously I'll have to fix the grammar and whatnot there, but we'll just chalk that up there. Okay. Let me get back to the assembly page here, and to Chair Peasley's request. We can do a group motion. So that would be a motion. Let me just go down to the recommendation. A motion to recommend the attached rule changes for R7-2-604, R7-2-607, R7-2-610.02, R7-2-616, and R7-2-619 as attached with those clarifications that we just made on R7-2-616 to the State Board of Education to open rulemaking procedures.
I so move.
I'll second it.
That was a motion by Member Weber and a second by Member Tabo, I believe. Or I believe. So if everyone could unmute now. And all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, so we have that motion passing unanimously, which moves us on to our next item here on the agenda. So get us back to the full screen here, which is future meeting dates and items for future agendas. As I had mentioned, the rule in that last motion will go to the board at the September 26th meeting to open rulemaking procedures. And as is usually the case, that takes about 3 meetings. So hopefully those will be adopted in December. And although that is past the effective date of the legislation, of course, the department uses the statute until the rule comes into place. And a lot of that is conforming changes. So they're not looking for as much guidance, but there are a few things that hopefully the rule will be able to help out with when it's adopted. Again, hopefully the plan is December. We'll keep you all up to date on that. Our next meeting is, I believe it's October 6th, October 4th, and October 4th. So we will, I'm not sure if we'll have anything for you then, but we'll keep that on the schedule. And as usual, I'll try to give you all a heads up a week or two in advance. This was the big to-do on our list, and so we've checked that off today. So we might not have that October board meeting, but I will let you know. I also would like to put in a request with the committee before we potentially wrap up here, which is that we are looking for a local governing board member for this committee. As you all know, Member Spear had to step down, and so if you all know of any school board members who would be good for this committee or interested, send them our way, and we can fill in some more gaps for them on what it takes, or you can as well. But that is a position we're looking for. So Chair Peasley, before we call it a day here, do you have any parting shots for us?
No, I don't have any parting shots. I don't have any words of wisdom. I just have thanks, great thanks again for this committee, for the folks that have served a long time, like Ann, Carolyn, Matt, you've been with us a long time as well. Robbie, you're getting to be an old timer. But we just thank you. And again, as I said at the beginning, thanks to our certification department for the amazing work that you are doing in bringing us these great packages, and the information, because it's only through our collective understanding and wisdom that we can catch these little items that and yeah, the best minds, the best committees, this work that we do is extraordinarily complex, and it does take the breadth and the strength of this committee and covering all areas of public education to get us to this point. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
great week, everyone.
Okay, then we can adjourn this meeting of the Certification Advisory Committee at 10:29. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
So much.
Bye.
Bye.